The rain fell in sheets that night, washing away the blood as Marcus cradled the unconscious child in his trembling arms. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice breaking as he ran through the deserted streets, his worn shoes splashing through puddles. He had no idea that this moment would change everything, not just for him and his son, but for the dying girl whose identity would shock the world. If you're moved by stories of ordinary heroes and the extraordinary twists of fate that connect us all, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming true stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Marcus Reed was no stranger to struggle. At 35, his weathered face told the story of a man who had seen more than his fair share of hardship. 5 years earlier, his wife Sarah had died giving birth to their son, Elijah, leaving Marcus to navigate single parenthood while working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Their apartment in the rundown part of the city was small but clean, and despite everything, Marcus had managed to create a home filled with love. That fateful evening had begun like any other. After finishing his shift at the warehouse, Marcus had picked up Elijah from the neighbor who watched him after school. They were walking home through the rain when they passed the alley. Marcus would have continued past if not for Elijah tugging at his sleeve. "Dad, I heard something," the 10-year-old said, his eyes wide with concern. Against his better judgment, Marcus followed his son into the alley, shielding his flashlight app with one hand. There, crumpled against the brick wall, lay a girl no older than 12. Her expensive clothes were torn and muddied, her face pale as moonlight except for a gash across her forehead that bled steadily into her matted blonde hair. "Call 911, Marcus told Elijah, handing him the phone while kneeling beside the girl, checking for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. As they waited for the ambulance, Marcus removed his jacket despite the rain, covering the child to keep her warm. "It's going to be okay," he promised, though he had no way of knowing if that was true. When her eyes fluttered open briefly, they were a startling shade of blue, filled with terror. "Help," she whispered before slipping back into unconsciousness. When the ambulance finally arrived, Marcus insisted on accompanying the girl to the hospital. Something about her vulnerability struck a chord in him. Perhaps it was because he had a child himself, or perhaps it was simply human decency that wouldn't allow him to abandon someone in need. He called his neighbor again, asking if Elijah could stay the night, promising to explain everything later. At the hospital, the staff worked quickly to stabilize the girl. "Are you family?" a nurse asked Marcus as he paced the waiting room, his clothes still damp from the rain. "No," he admitted. "I found her in an alley. She was alone." The nurse's expression softened. "You did the right thing bringing her in. She's suffering from hypothermia and that head wound needed stitches. If you hadn't found her when you did." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Hours passed. Marcus knew he should go home to Elijah, but something kept him there, waiting for news. When a doctor finally approached, his face was grave. "The girl is stable, but she's suffering from more than just tonight's injuries. She has a rare blood disorder that requires immediate treatment. We're doing everything we can, but without knowing her medical history or family contacts." "Can I see her?" Marcus asked, surprising himself. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. "She's been asking for the man who saved me. Just a few minutes, though." Inside the sterile hospital room, the girl looked even smaller and more fragile than she had in the alley. Her blonde hair had been cleaned, revealing a face that, despite its pallor, was strikingly beautiful. When she saw Marcus, a small smile touched her lips. "You came back," she whispered. "I did," he said, taking a seat beside her bed. "My name's Marcus." "What's yours?" "Emma," she replied. "Emma Taylor." The name meant nothing to Marcus then. How could he have known that across town, in a mansion atop the city's most exclusive hill, media mogul and billionaire Richard Taylor was frantically coordinating a citywide search for his missing daughter? Over the next days, Marcus returned to the hospital after his shifts, often bringing Elijah with him. The boy and Emma formed an instant connection, with Elijah bringing her drawings and telling her about school. Marcus tried to contact social services about Emma, but the process was frustratingly slow, and no one seemed to be searching for the girl. When Emma was pressed about her family, she became evasive, claiming she couldn't remember. The doctors attributed this to her head injury and the trauma of whatever had led to her being in that alley. What Marcus didn't know was that Emma remembered everything. She remembered the argument with her father over boarding school, the impulsive decision to run away, the men who had recognized her from the news and chased her into the unfamiliar part of the city. She remembered falling, hitting her head, the cold rain soaking through her designer clothes. But something held her back from revealing her identity, the simple kindness in Marcus and Elijah's eyes, so different from the calculated relationships that defined her privileged but lonely life. As Emma's medical condition worsened, the hospital pressed for decisions about her treatment. Without legal guardianship, Marcus's hands were tied, yet he couldn't bear the thought of abandoning her to the system. In a moment of desperation, he signed paperwork claiming to be her uncle, buying time to figure out a more permanent solution. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Emma asked him one evening as he sat by her bed, his eyes heavy from working a double shift. Marcus thought about it for a moment. "Because everyone deserves someone who won't give up on them," he finally said. "When my wife died, I felt like giving up. But Elijah needed me, so I kept going. Sometimes that's all we can do, keep going for the people who need us." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "My mom died too," she admitted, the first real piece of her past she'd shared. 3 years ago. Cancer. After that, my dad, he changed. It's like he couldn't stand to look at me because I remind him of her." Marcus reached out, taking her small hand in his calloused one. "I'm sorry, Emma. No child should feel unwanted." Little did he know, Richard Taylor had never stopped loving his daughter. His grief had indeed made him distant, focusing on work to numb the pain of losing his wife. When Emma disappeared, it shattered the walls he'd built, making him realize what truly mattered. His search had been hindered by incompetent private investigators and the fact that Emma had been admitted to the hospital under no last name, listed simply as Jane Doe, until she'd given Marcus her first name. The turning point came when Emma's condition deteriorated dramatically. She needed a specialized treatment that required parental consent and was not covered by the emergency state fund. Marcus, desperate to save the girl who had become like family to him and Elijah, made a decision that could have landed him in jail. He took out a predatory loan against his already mortgaged house to pay for the first round of treatment. "You can't do this," Emma protested weakly when she learned what he had done. "You'll lose everything." "Some things matter more than houses," he told her simply. "You get better. That's all that matters now." That same day, across town, one of Richard Taylor's investigators finally made the connection to the hospital admission of a young girl matching Emma's description. When Richard burst into Emma's hospital room, Marcus was sitting beside her bed, reading aloud from one of Elijah's favorite books while his son slept curled up in a chair on the other side. The confrontation that followed was tense and emotional. Richard, overcome at finding his daughter alive but horrified at her condition, initially accused Marcus of kidnapping. Emma, summoning strength no one knew she possessed, defended the man who had saved her life. "He found me dying, Daddy," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "He's been here every day. He sold his house to pay for my medicine. Where were you?" The billionaire looked from his daughter to the exhausted single father, the truth of the situation slowly dawning on him. This man had no idea who Emma was. He had simply helped a child in need, expecting nothing in return, while Richard's own wealth and power had failed to protect and find his daughter. In the days that followed, an uneasy alliance formed. Richard moved Emma to a private hospital suite and ensured she received the best care money could buy. Marcus, relieved that Emma had found her family but heartbroken at the thought of losing her, continued to visit with Elijah whenever they could. As Emma grew stronger, the relationship between the two fathers evolved from suspicion to grudging respect. Richard learned about Marcus's struggles, his dedication to his son despite overwhelming odds, and the loan that would likely leave them homeless. Marcus, in turn, came to understand the grief that had driven Richard's emotional absence and the genuine love he felt for his daughter. When Emma was finally released from the hospital, it was with the understanding that her relationship with Marcus and Elijah wouldn't end. Richard, humbled by the realization that his wealth couldn't buy the kind of decency Marcus had shown, made an offer that changed everything: a job in his media company that would utilize Marcus's untapped talents, a new home in a safe neighborhood with good schools, and a complete reversal of the loan terms. "I don't want charity," Marcus had initially protested. "It's not charity," Richard replied. "It's an investment in the man who saved my daughter when I couldn't. Besides, Emma would never forgive me if I let you disappear from her life." A year later, the changes in all their lives were profound. Marcus had discovered a talent for production that had quickly made him valuable at Taylor Media. Elijah was thriving in his new school, with Emma as his self-appointed big sister. Richard, transformed by nearly losing his daughter, had become present in her life in ways that mattered, even as he learned to open his heart to others. On the anniversary of the night Marcus found Emma in the rain, the unlikely blended family gathered for dinner in Richard's mansion, no longer an intimidating fortress of wealth but a place where laughter echoed through previously silent rooms. "I've been thinking," Emma said as they finished dessert, "about what would have happened if you hadn't heard me that night, Marcus." "But I did," he said simply. "And that's all that matters." Richard raised his glass. "To hearing what others miss," he offered. "And to the courage to act on it." As the evening wound down, Emma pulled Marcus aside. "Dad's setting up a foundation," she told him excitedly. "For kids with my blood disorder who don't have insurance. He wants you to help run it." Marcus looked across the room at Richard, who nodded in confirmation. "Your father has come a long way," Marcus observed. "We all have," Emma replied. "You know what the doctors said last week? I'm officially in remission. And it's because of you, not just the treatment you helped me get, but because you gave me something to fight for. A real family." The story of the poor single father who rescued a billionaire's daughter made headlines when Richard eventually went public with the foundation. But for those involved, the real story wasn't about wealth or dramatic rescues. It was about the bridges built between worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. It was about recognizing that true value isn't measured in bank accounts but in the courage to stop for a child in the rain, to give when you have nothing left, to open your heart when it's already been broken. As night fell over the city, lights twinkled in windows both modest and grand. In each of those homes, people carried their own burdens and hopes. The lesson of Marcus, Emma, and Richard was that sometimes our most important connections come disguised as chance encounters, and that compassion, not money or power, is what truly saves us in the end. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness matters, that second chances exist, and that families aren't just born, sometimes they're forged in the most unexpected circumstances.